The Appalachian Trail stretches like a scar across the eastern United States, a winding, ancient path cutting through forests older than recorded history. 2,190 miles of mountains, valleys, ridgelines, and deep green silence. By day, it looks peaceful, almost inviting. By night, it becomes something else entirely. Leaves crunch softly under unseen footsteps. The wind slides through the trees like a whisper that never quite forms words. And the farther you walk, the more the modern world fades. Cell signals disappear, familiar sounds vanish, and time itself seems to slow. This is a place where people come to find themselves. And, disturbingly often, a place where people are never found again. The question that has haunted investigators, park rangers, and families for decades is deceptively simple. How can someone vanish while walking just a few feet ahead of their friends? This is DaVinci Tell Stories. And tonight, we are revealing the dark secrets of the Appalachian Trail. It was a clear October day in 1976 when a group of high school students hiked through the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The air was crisp, the sky pale blue, the kind of autumn day that makes danger feel impossible. Among them was Trenny Gibson, a quiet, athletic 16-year-old with dark hair and a thoughtful expression that teachers often described as dreamy. She was not reckless. She was not rebellious. She was simply a teenager on a school field trip. The group moved along the trail near Clingman's Dome, one of the highest points in the Smoky Mountains. The path narrowed, curving gently through dense trees and thick underbrush. Trenny walked near the front. At one point, witnesses would later say, she turned a bend in the trail, no more than 6 or 7 feet ahead of the others. She did not run. She did not leave the path. She did not call out. And yet, when the rest of the group rounded that same bend moments later, she was gone. No scream, no sound of running, no movement in the trees. Just an empty trail, stretching forward into the forest as if she had never existed at all. At first, no one panicked. Teachers assumed Trenny had stepped aside to use the restroom, or perhaps lagged behind. Classmates laughed nervously, calling her name into the woods. Trenny, Trenny, stop messing around. But the forest did not answer. Minutes passed, then more minutes. And finally, the realization set in. Something was very wrong. Search efforts began almost immediately. Park rangers, volunteers, helicopters, sent dogs. Hundreds of people flooded the area surrounding Clingman's Dome. They searched ravines, combed trails, checked streams, and descended steep embankments where a fall might have occurred. The terrain was unforgiving. Thick brush tore at clothing. The ground dropped away suddenly in places, hidden beneath fallen leaves. But even accounting for all of that, there was no trace of Trenny Gibson. No footprints leading off the trail. No broken branches. No discarded clothing. No blood. The dogs lost her scent almost immediately. It was as if she had simply stepped out of reality. As night fell over the Smoky Mountains, the temperature dropped sharply. Fog rolled through the trees, swallowing flashlight beams and muffling voices. Searchers reported a strange stillness. No insects, no birds, only the heavy silence of the forest pressing in from all sides. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The official explanations varied. Some suggested Trenny had wandered off and succumbed to the elements. Others quietly speculated about abduction, though no evidence of another person was ever found. Then there were the rumors. Local whispers spoke of high strangeness in that part of the park. Stories of people hearing voices calling their names from off the trail. Of hikers experiencing sudden disorientation, as if the forest itself had rearranged around them. One ranger reportedly said something chilling. The Smokies don't just hide people, sometimes they take them. To this day, Trenny Gibson has never been found. No remains. No answers. Only a single moment in time. A bend in the trail where a human life simply ended. And this case reveals the first dark secret of the Appalachian Trail. You don't need to be alone to disappear. You don't need hours. Sometimes, the trail only needs seconds. The disappearance of Trenny Gibson should have left behind something. A footprint pressed deeper into the mud. A snapped twig. A scuff mark where panic set in and someone ran. Instead, investigators were faced with a void. In the days following her disappearance, the Great Smoky Mountains became a maze of orange tape and quiet desperation. Searchers moved in long lines through the forest, each person spaced just far enough apart to catch even the smallest disturbance. Helicopters hovered above the canopy, their rotors chopping through the mist. Dogs strained against their handlers, noses low to the ground, confused by a scent that seemed to evaporate without warning. What made the case deeply unsettling was not just the absence of Trenny Gibson, it was the absence of logic. She was not an experienced hiker, but she was not helpless. She was not known to wander. And she vanished in daylight, surrounded by people, on a maintained trail. One investigator later admitted that the case violated every known pattern of lost person behavior. Normally, someone panics. They move downhill. They follow water. They leave signs of struggle or fatigue. Trenny did none of these things. Because, according to the evidence, she never had the chance. The bend in the trail where Trenny was last seen became a focal point of the investigation. Rangers returned to it again and again, standing silently, trying to imagine how a person could vanish between one step and the next. The trees were dense, but not impenetrable. The slope nearby was steep, but not lethal. There were no hidden mine shafts, no caves large enough to swallow a human body whole. And yet, searchers repeatedly described the same unsettling sensation while standing there, a feeling that the forest was watching them. Some dismissed it as nerves. Others were less certain. Several volunteers later reported moments of sudden disorientation in that exact area. A few said they felt an overwhelming urge to leave the trail, though they couldn't explain why. One man claimed the forest grew unnaturally quiet, as if all sound had been muted at once. No official report mentioned these details, but among those who searched for Trenny, the memories lingered. Over time, explanations hardened into theories, none of them satisfying. The accident theory suggested Trenny slipped, fell into a hidden ravine, and was concealed by foliage. But repeated searches of the terrain found nothing. The abduction theory raised an even darker possibility that someone was hiding in the woods, waiting. But there were no witnesses, no sounds of struggle, no evidence of another presence. And then there were theories no one wanted to say out loud. That Trenny had experienced a sudden mental break. That she had followed something unseen. That the forest itself had somehow intervened. Her family was left in a permanent state of suspended grief. No body meant no funeral. No answers meant no closure. For decades, her name remained on missing persons lists, a reminder that not all mysteries fade with time. Instead, some grow sharper. As years passed, Trenny Gibson's case quietly joined others, hikers, campers, and travelers who vanished under eerily similar circumstances across the Appalachian Range. People who disappeared near trails. People last seen moments before they were gone. People whose scent trails stopped abruptly, as if they had been lifted from the earth. Individually, each case could be dismissed. Together, they suggested something far more disturbing. The Appalachian Trail is not just long, it is isolated, fragmented, and often unguarded. It passes through towns and then disappears into wilderness where help may be hours or days away. And while nature itself is dangerous, there is something far more unpredictable out there. Because the second dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this: the forest does not have to kill you. Sometimes, it only has to hide what someone else has done. By the late 1970s, the Appalachian Trail had earned a reputation that few guidebooks mentioned. It was a place of solitude, reflection, and endurance, but also a place where rules dissolved and anonymity thrived. Out here, there were no neighbors watching, no security cameras, no quick escape for those who needed help. And slowly, painfully, investigators began to understand a truth that would redefine every missing and murder case connected to the trail. The wilderness did not create the danger. It concealed it. Along the Appalachian Trail, rustic wooden shelters are spaced every few miles. Built to protect hikers from storms and exhaustion, they are open to anyone. No locks, no reservations, no records of who comes and goes. At night, these shelters fill with strangers. Headlamps flicker in the darkness. Boots are unlaced. Backpacks become pillows. Names are exchanged casually, if at all. Most hikers believe the trail community is self-policing, bonded by shared hardship. And most of the time, that belief holds true. Until it doesn't. Because a shelter offers something else as well: privacy, isolation, and opportunity. And in 1981, one man would expose just how vulnerable these places truly were. Randall Lee Smith, too, did not look like a monster. He was a Vietnam veteran, soft-spoken, familiar with the outdoors. Other hikers remembered him as helpful, even charming, the kind of man who knew how to gain trust quickly. In July of 1981, Smith encountered a young couple hiking the Appalachian Trail near Wapiti Shelter in Virginia. The night passed without incident. A campfire, quiet conversation, shared exhaustion. By morning, that sense of safety was gone. Smith attacked the couple with a knife, killing one and severely injuring the other. The survivor would later describe the attack as sudden and ferocious, violence erupting without warning in a place that felt impossibly remote. Smith was eventually arrested, tried, and convicted. But even after his capture, the damage was irreversible. The illusion of safety had been shattered. What made the Smith case particularly disturbing was not just the brutality, it was how easily he blended into the environment. He didn't force his way into the shelter. He didn't stalk from the shadows. He simply walked the trail like everyone else. Investigators later acknowledged something deeply unsettling. If Smith had not been caught, his crimes could have vanished into the vastness of the Appalachian wilderness. Bodies decompose faster in the elements. Evidence is scattered by animals and weather. Trails erase themselves. And not every case ends with a conviction. Years later, another tragedy would reinforce the same grim reality. Scott Lilly, a man traveling near the Appalachian region, was found murdered under circumstances that raised more questions than answers. Though details remain fragmented, the case underscored a persistent issue. When violence happens in or near the trail, it is often poorly witnessed, poorly documented, and difficult to prosecute. Witnesses are transient. Timelines are vague. Memories blur with distance and fear. The trail keeps its secrets well. The Appalachian Trail is often portrayed as a test of endurance against nature. But the real danger does not always growl, slither, or stalk on four legs. Sometimes it shares your fire. Sometimes it offers you food. Sometimes it sleeps just a few feet away, listening to your breathing in the dark. The second dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this: the greatest predator on the trail walks upright, carries a pack, and knows exactly how to disappear. There is a moment on the Appalachian Trail that many survivors struggle to describe. It happens quietly, without drama, without warning. A subtle tightening in the chest. A sense that something is off, even though nothing looks wrong. The forest is still beautiful. The trail is still visible. but the body knows something the mind hasn't yet accepted. Most people ignore it. Hikers are conditioned to be polite, to trust fellow travelers, to believe that danger announces itself clearly and violently. But on the Appalachian Trail, danger often arrives disguised as normalcy. A man who asks too many questions. A hiker who seems to appear repeatedly, always a little too close. A voice calling from just off the trail, asking for help, but never quite coming into view. Survivors of violent encounters on the trail often describe the same internal conflict. The moment when instinct screams leave, but social conditioning insists don't overreact. One woman, who later escaped an attempted assault near a shelter in North Carolina, described sitting beside a stranger as the sun went down. He never touched her, never raised his voice, but something about the way he watched the tree line instead of her made her skin crawl. When she finally stood up and said she was moving on, his expression changed. Not anger, not surprise, disappointment. She left anyway, and she survived. The Appalachian Trail creates a rhythm. Wake, pack, walk, rest, sleep. Over time, that rhythm dulls awareness. The trail becomes predictable, even comforting. Shelters feel like checkpoints. Fellow hikers feel like allies. That comfort is precisely what predators rely on. They know people let their guard down after long miles. They know exhaustion makes judgment slow. They know no one expects violence in a place designed for peace. In several documented cases, victims later admitted they noticed warning signs, but dismissed them because nothing bad had happened yet. On the trail, that delay can be fatal. What separates Appalachian Trail crimes from those in cities is not brutality, it is isolation. There are no crowds to intervene, no streetlights, no immediate escape. If someone chooses to harm you, the forest becomes their accomplice. Sound doesn't travel far through trees. Screams are swallowed by distance. Footprints vanish with the next rainfall. Even when someone escapes, reporting the crime can take hours or days, long enough for an attacker to disappear into another state, another section, another identity. The trail does not ask questions. Not every story ends with survival. Some hikers trusted the wrong person. Some ignored the wrong feeling. Some stayed one night too long at a shelter that felt uneasy but familiar. And some were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, when someone else decided no one would ever know. These are not accidents of nature. They are failures of assumption. The assumption that remote means safe. The assumption that shared hardship creates shared morality. The assumption that evil needs witnesses. It does not. The Appalachian Trail does not create monsters. It gives them space. And it teaches them something valuable: how to wait. The third dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this: the most dangerous moments are not when fear is obvious, but when it is quiet, reasonable, and easy to ignore. There is a point on the Appalachian Trail where the danger stops feeling human. It's subtle at first, a sensation rather than an event. The quiet realization that you are no longer alone, even when no one is there. Hikers struggle to put it into words. They talk about the forest watching, not in a metaphorical sense, but in a way that feels deliberate and aware. The trees stand motionless, yet the air seems charged, as if something is holding its breath. This is the side of the Appalachian Trail few park brochures acknowledge. Normally, the forest is alive with sound. Birds call from the canopy. Insects hum beneath the leaves. Wind moves through branches in uneven waves. But some hikers describe moments when all of it stops at once. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just a heavy, pressing silence that feels almost physical. Several experienced backpackers have reported freezing in place during these moments, overcome by the sudden certainty that movement would be a mistake. One former thru hiker described standing on the trail at dusk, listening to the silence grow so deep that he could hear his own heartbeat echo inside his ears. He waited and waited. When the sounds finally returned, they did so all at once, as if the forest had exhaled. He left the trail early the next morning. Strange lights are among the most commonly reported unexplained phenomena along the Appalachian Range. Small, distant glows drifting between trees. Orbs that hover briefly before vanishing. Flickers of light that do not move like flashlights or campfires. Skeptics often point to natural explanations: bioluminescent fungi, distant hikers, atmospheric conditions. And in many cases, those explanations may be valid. But not all. Some witnesses describe lights that respond to movement. Lights that retreat when approached. Lights that seem to follow, staying just out of reach. One hiker in Pennsylvania reported seeing a soft blue glow pacing him along the ridgeline for nearly half a mile, never coming closer, never falling behind. When he finally stopped walking, the light stopped too. Then it vanished. Perhaps the most unsettling accounts involve a powerful urge, the feeling of being drawn away from the path. Hikers describe noticing a faint sound, like their name being whispered. Others report a sudden certainty that something important lies just beyond the tree line. Most resist the urge. Some don't. Search and rescue veterans quietly acknowledge that many missing person cases begin with this exact behavior: a brief, unexplained deviation from the trail that quickly becomes disorientation, panic, and loss of direction. In extreme cases, scent trails end abruptly, with no sign of wandering or confusion beforehand, as if the person stepped somewhere they were never meant to go. These experiences are often grouped under the controversial umbrella of Missing 411, a collection of cases and reports highlighting patterns of strange disappearances in national parks. While critics argue that poor preparation and environmental factors explain most cases, even skeptics admit something unsettling. The patterns repeat. Disappearances near water. Sudden weather changes. Victims found in areas previously searched. And a consistent absence of logical explanation. The Appalachian Trail, with its length and isolation, contains more than its share of these cases. Not proof of the supernatural, but enough to make certainty uncomfortable. Whether these experiences have rational explanations or something stranger at their core, they share one undeniable truth. The Appalachian Trail does not always behave like a passive landscape. It affects perception. It alters judgment. It blurs the line between instinct and imagination. The fourth dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this: sometimes the trail doesn't just hide danger. It convinces you to walk straight into it. Not every death on the Appalachian Trail involves violence, mystery, or something unexplained. Some are brutally simple, and that simplicity is what makes them so dangerous. The Appalachian Trail does not need intent to kill. It only needs time, weather, and a single mistake. By the time most hikers realize they are exhausted, it is already too late. Muscles weaken slowly, almost imperceptibly. Decision-making becomes foggy. Small problems feel manageable until they are not. A missed turn, a skipped meal, a decision to push just a little farther. Search and rescue teams often describe finding lost hikers who made a series of choices that seemed reasonable in the moment, but deadly in sequence. The trail is relentless in this way. It rewards discipline and punishes optimism. And unlike urban environments, there is no margin for error. The Appalachian Mountains create their own weather. Clear skies can collapse into violent storms within minutes. Temperatures drop sharply at higher elevations. Fog rolls in so thick that visibility shrinks to a few feet. In these conditions, the trail disappears. Blazes fade. Landmarks vanish. Direction becomes guesswork. Several hikers who survived near-fatal exposure described the same haunting realization. The moment they stopped recognizing where they were, even though they had walked that same section hours earlier. The forest had changed, and they had not. One of the most common fatal accidents on the Appalachian Trail is also one of the least dramatic, a slip. Wet leaves, loose gravel, a moment of distraction. Steep embankments line large portions of the trail, many of them concealed by vegetation. A fall of just a few feet can break a leg. A fall of a few yards can end a life. And if no one is nearby, there are no witnesses, no calls for help, no second chances. Bodies have been discovered months later in ravines just yards from heavily traveled sections of trail, hidden in plain sight. When someone disappears due to exposure or injury, search efforts face enormous obstacles. Rain washes away footprints. Animals scatter clothing. Vegetation grows quickly. A hiker who leaves the trail, even briefly, becomes exponentially harder to find with each passing hour. Searchers may walk within feet of a victim and never see them. The forest absorbs mistakes quietly. The Appalachian Trail does not discriminate. It does not care if you are kind, experienced, or prepared. It does not respond to panic or regret. The fifth dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this: you don't need a killer, a monster, or a mystery to disappear. Sometimes, the trail only requires that you underestimate it once. When search teams finally locate a missing hiker, there is usually relief. But on the Appalachian Trail, that relief is sometimes replaced by confusion and then dread. Because some victims are found in places that defy explanation. One of the most disturbing patterns reported by search and rescue teams is the phenomenon of hikers being discovered in areas that were already thoroughly searched. Grid lines established. Dogs deployed. Volunteers combing the terrain shoulder to shoulder. Nothing. And then, days or even weeks later, a body is found in the same location, sometimes in clear view. Officials often attribute this to human error or environmental concealment. But among those who conduct searches, the explanations feel insufficient. Experienced searchers know when an area has been cleared, and yet the pattern repeats. Some recovered hikers are found far from logical routes, uphill instead of downhill, away from water instead of toward it, in terrain that would require deliberate effort to reach while injured or exhausted. In several Appalachian cases, victims were located on steep ridges or elevated areas with no obvious reason to be there. These are not choices typical of disoriented hikers. They are deliberate, and that is what makes them unsettling. Another recurring detail is clothing. Shoes removed and placed neatly beside bodies. Jackets missing in freezing temperatures. Backpacks found intact, but nowhere nearby. Medical professionals often cite paradoxical undressing, a rare response to extreme hypothermia, but that explanation does not fit every case. Some victims were not hypothermic. Some were not exposed long enough. Some were dressed in ways that suggested intention, not confusion. The trail gives no answers. Perhaps most haunting of all are the cases where victims show no signs of distress. No torn fingernails. No defensive wounds. No evidence of frantic movement. They appear to have laid down, as if they accepted something. Searchers quietly admit these cases stay with them the longest, because fear should leave a mark. Whether these outcomes are the result of misunderstood survival behavior, environmental factors, or something else entirely, the pattern remains. The Appalachian Trail does not always take people violently. Sometimes, it returns them calmly. The sixth dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this: when the trail gives someone back, it doesn't always explain what happened in between. For families of the missing, time does not move forward. It circles. Birthdays arrive without celebration. Holidays pass with an empty chair. Every phone call carries the same fragile hope. Maybe this is it. When someone disappears on the Appalachian Trail, there is no final moment to mourn. No confirmed goodbye. Only a question that never stops echoing. What really happened out there? Grief usually has a shape. A funeral, a grave, a place to bring flowers. But families of the missing exist in a different reality, one where loss has no boundary. Parents keep bedrooms untouched for decades. Siblings age while memories remain frozen. Spouses hesitate to move on, fearing that acceptance might somehow be betrayal. In cases like Trenny Gibson's, families are forced to navigate life without certainty, never knowing if their loved one suffered, survived briefly, or was taken by something beyond understanding. Hope becomes both a comfort and a curse. Many families stay tethered to the trail long after searches end. They memorize ranger stations. They follow news of hikers found in distant states. They study grainy photographs of recovered remains, searching for familiarity. Every time a backpack is discovered, every time bones are found near a trail, every time a missing hiker is identified. For most families, the answer is no, and the waiting continues. Over time, memories begin to blur, replaced by imagined scenarios. Did they suffer? Were they afraid? Did they call out for help? Families describe lying awake at night, replaying possibilities they can never confirm. The Appalachian Trail becomes not just a place, but a presence, an unanswered force that stole someone and refuses to explain itself. Some families find solace in believing the disappearance was quick, others in believing it was meaningful. All of them are searching for peace where there is none. Among hikers, certain names are spoken quietly, not as campfire stories, but as warnings. People leave small tokens near last seen locations, ribbons, notes, carved initials, unofficial memorials that fade with weather, only to be rebuilt by strangers who never knew the victims but understand the risk. The trail remembers, even when the world moves on. The Appalachian Trail does not only take individuals. It takes futures. It takes certainty. It takes peace. The seventh dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this. The disappearance does not end on the trail. It follows families home and stays there forever. Not everyone who encounters darkness on the Appalachian Trail disappears. Some return, but they do not come back the same. Survivors often begin their stories confidently. They describe the weather, the mileage, the shelter where they stopped, and then something shifts. Their voices lower. Details become vague. Sentences trail off unfinished. Many hikers admit there are parts of their experience they choose not to share, not because they are dramatic, but because they fear being dismissed, or worse, believed. One thru hiker who abandoned the trail halfway through later said, "I didn't see anything I could explain. That's the problem. I only felt it, and I don't ever want to feel it again." Some hikers describe moments where survival seemed less like luck and more like escape. A sudden urge to leave a shelter minutes before someone arrived. A decision to camp off trail that avoided a violent storm, or something else. A sense of being watched that became so overwhelming they hiked through the night despite exhaustion. In retrospect, these decisions feel guided, not by logic, by fear without a source. Several experienced hikers have described sections of the trail that felt fundamentally wrong, not dangerous in a physical sense, but oppressive. The air felt heavier. Sound seemed distorted. Time stretched unnaturally. One former park volunteer recalled escorting lost hikers out of a section in West Virginia where radios repeatedly failed, compasses behaved erratically, and people complained of headaches and nausea without cause. No explanation was ever recorded. The section remains open. Many survivors leave the trail quietly. No interviews. No social media posts. No dramatic warnings. They simply stop hiking. When asked why, they often say something simple. "I got what I needed." but those close to them notice changes. Restlessness, nightmares, a reluctance to be alone in forests again. The trail took something from them, not their lives, but their certainty. Survival is not always a victory. Sometimes it is a burden. The eighth dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this. Some people make it back, but a part of them never leaves the forest. When investigators look at the Appalachian Trail as a whole, they start to notice something unnerving. Disappearances, near misses, and strange encounters are not randomly scattered along the 2,190 miles. They cluster. They form patterns. And those patterns refuse to be ignored. The trail cuts through 13 states, weaving in and out of towns and wilderness areas. Some sections are heavily trafficked, others almost forgotten. Yet, the majority of unexplained disappearances occur in specific zones. Dense forest ridges in the Smoky Mountains, remote valleys in Virginia and Pennsylvania, isolated highlands of Maine. Investigators call these hot zones, places where hikers vanish with frightening regularity, often under circumstances that defy logic. What makes these zones particularly sinister is not just their isolation. It's how easily a person can be removed from the trail and never seen again, whether by accident, predator, or something else. Another eerie pattern emerges when you consider timing. Disappearances are not evenly distributed throughout the year. Late spring and early fall see the highest numbers. Weather is generally moderate, making the trail appealing. Yet these are also times when the forest conceals more. Fog, leaves, and undergrowth create natural camouflage. Some search and rescue coordinators quietly note a chilling observation. Victims often vanish during daylight hours when other hikers are nearby. This mirrors Trenny Gibson's case, a reminder that proximity does not guarantee safety. Despite differences in age, gender, experience, and reason for hiking, most cases share common threads. The victim is last seen on a trail, ridge, or shelter. Environmental or human hazards are present, but do not fully explain the disappearance. Recovery, if it happens at all, is delayed and often inconsistent with logical movement or behavior. Many victims are found in locations previously searched, sometimes lying in positions that suggest a pause, not panic. These repeating features have led some investigators to consider the Appalachian Trail itself as an unpredictable force rather than merely a setting. Some cases are too peculiar to dismiss. Witnesses report feeling watched by an unseen presence, strange lights moving along the ridges, unexplained compasses or GPS failures, sudden changes in temperature or weather localized to a single hiker. These reports, often grouped under the missing 411 phenomenon, are controversial. Skeptics claim coincidence. Believers see a pattern too precise to ignore. Regardless of interpretation, there is agreement on one point. Something about certain sections of the trail disrupts expectation, behavior, and sometimes reality itself. Individually, a disappearance may seem tragic but isolated. Together, the numbers, locations, and recurring anomalies suggest something else entirely. The ninth dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this. The trail is not uniformly dangerous, but certain areas seem to possess a concentrated, almost magnetic risk. Some hikers enter these zones and emerge unscathed. Others vanish without trace. The question is not why these areas exist, but what makes them so effective at taking people. As the Appalachian Trail stretches across forests, ridges, and mountains, it can feel timeless, a place where nature exists in its purest form. But for some hikers, that purity takes on a darker, almost sentient quality. It is not merely the isolation or the danger of terrain that unnerves them. It is the feeling of being watched, of the trail itself responding to their presence. Many hikers describe subtle shifts that precede disappearances or near misses. A twig snaps behind them. Shadows move out of the corner of their eye. The sound of footsteps matches theirs, but when they stop, the noise stops too. One veteran hiker in North Carolina recounted pausing for water on a ridge. He glanced back and saw movement among the trees. Not a human form, not an animal, but something that seemed to mirror him, keeping distance yet never letting him relax. He ran, not because of logic, but because instinct screamed at him, "Leave now." When he reached the next shelter, his companions saw nothing unusual. The forest had waited. High strangeness is the term many investigators use to describe these phenomena. Witnesses report strange lights drifting between trees, often out of reach or fading when approached. Sudden, localized fog or temperature changes around a single hiker. Whispered voices calling names from directions where no one could be. Moments when animals fall silent, and even the wind seems still. One hiker claimed he saw a blue-white orb floating above a creek at dusk. It followed him for nearly half a mile, staying just out of reach. When he stopped, the orb stopped. When he moved again, it followed. Then, suddenly, it vanished. These experiences defy explanation, yet they are reported by multiple, credible witnesses, often in the same geographic zones. Some hikers describe an altered sense of direction or time. Compasses spinning erratically, GPS devices failing, or trails that seemed familiar but led somewhere entirely unexpected. These distortions are sometimes attributed to exhaustion or environmental factors, but survivors insist there is more at play. The forest is not merely backdrop. It seems interactive, guiding, warning, or perhaps testing those who pass through. One park ranger, speaking quietly, admitted, "Sometimes, the forest feels like it knows you're there and decides what to let you see." Skeptics suggest optical illusions, light reflections, and mental fatigue. Believers see a pattern, a strange intelligence embedded in the forest, perhaps a natural phenomenon we do not yet understand, perhaps something else entirely. Whatever the cause, the effect is the same. Hikers report changes in behavior, hesitation, and choices they would not have made otherwise. Some of these decisions save lives. Others lead to disappearance. The Appalachian Trail is not a passive setting. It is unpredictable. It is observing. And it can manipulate what people perceive, leaving them vulnerable, even when nothing appears to threaten them. The 10th dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this. Sometimes, it is not predators, weather, or accidents that take people. Sometimes, it is the forest itself guiding them, somewhere they cannot return from. The Appalachian Trail has claimed many lives through obvious dangers, falls, exposure, or human violence. But some disappearances are different. They leave no rational explanation, no evidence, and no closure. These are the cases that haunt rangers, investigators, and families alike. The ones where the trail seems to swallow people whole and refuse to return them. In addition to Trenny Gibson, other young hikers have vanished under similar circumstances. One summer, a teenage boy was last seen near a small stream in North Carolina. He had been hiking with friends, laughing and joking, fully in view. Witnesses described turning a bend in the trail and seeing him disappear. Search teams found no tracks leading away from the trail. No signs of struggle. Nothing. Even months later, the boy was never found. His disappearance mirrored the sudden vanishing pattern seen in multiple missing 411 cases. A middle-aged hiker from Pennsylvania disappeared while hiking alone along a remote ridge. He had left notes in his car describing his route. Rangers searched extensively, combing the trail from both directions. Yet, when his body was discovered weeks later, it was lying far from his intended route, in an area already thoroughly searched. His clothing was intact, his backpack nearby. No animal attacks, no signs of trauma, no rational explanation for how he ended up there. Some disappearances occur mere miles from trailheads or shelters, places that should feel safe. One hiker was last seen approaching a well-used shelter in Virginia. Her friends were moments behind. She turned a corner, and then nothing. Despite extensive searches, neither she nor her belongings were ever recovered. This pattern repeats. Hikers vanish in plain sight, near company or civilization, and yet completely disappear. Across these cases, investigators note recurring anomalies. Vanishings occur on well-marked trails. Victims often leave no footprints beyond their last sighting. Dogs and trackers frequently lose the scent almost immediately. Weather conditions are often stable at the moment of disappearance. In some cases, witnesses report feeling watched or hearing unexplained sounds before the vanishing. Individually, each disappearance could be explained away. Together, they form a chilling pattern. There is no simple rule to these vanishings. They cannot be predicted, prevented, or explained fully by logic. The 11th dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this. Some people vanish not because they were careless, unlucky, or attacked, but because the trail itself seems to claim them for reasons unknown. The Appalachian Trail is not only a corridor of physical danger. It is a corridor of stories, stories told in hushed tones around campfires, passed between hikers like warnings disguised as folklore. Some dismiss these tales as exaggeration. Others know better. The trail has a way of turning imagination into experience. One of the oldest and most persistent legends involves the strange lights that appear after dusk. Hikers describe soft glows moving through the trees, sometimes following them, sometimes hovering above ridges. One elderly ranger recounted a story from the 1970s. We saw a blue-white light floating down a ridge. It didn't flicker like a lantern. It didn't blink. It just moved, as if it had a purpose. Sometimes, lights are seen in multiple places along a single ridge, moving independently, as if scouting the trail. Those who encounter them rarely speak of it afterward, either out of fear, disbelief, or the haunting memory that some things on the trail are not meant to be understood. Another common report involves hearing one's name whispered from the forest. It begins subtly, a soft murmur, almost carried by the wind. Then, over time, it seems to follow the hiker, prompting them to turn corners or leave the trail. Multiple hikers, independently, have described obeying the voice only to discover later they had been led miles off course. Some never return. Some survive and refuse to ever hike the trail alone again. Countless hikers have reported shadows moving just out of sight, glimpses of shapes that vanish when approached. Not animals, not humans, something that mimics movement and timing. One woman described standing frozen on a trail as a shadow mirrored her every step, stopping when she stopped, retreating when she moved backward, always maintaining distance, always watching. She left the trail the next morning, never to return. These stories, whether real or imagined, serve a purpose. They are warnings. They are echoes of those who disappeared. They remind hikers that the trail is more than terrain. It is a labyrinth of danger, both physical and inexplicable. Folklore persists because the forest preserves memory in ways modern life cannot. Stories become part of the trail, and the trail becomes part of the story. The Appalachian Trail is alive in ways that transcend biology and geology. It watches. It whispers. It remembers. The 12th dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this. Legends are not just stories. They are the trail's way of communicating its hidden truths and warning the living to pay attention. The Appalachian Trail is not merely long. It is layered with human threat, natural peril, and phenomena that defy explanation. Each mile has its own rhythm, its own character, its own secrets. And sometimes, all of these forces converge in ways that make even the most prepared hiker vulnerable. Consider this. A solo hiker moves into a remote section of the trail. The forest is thick, the terrain uneven. Night approaches faster than expected, and fog begins to creep along the ridges. Hours earlier, a predator was reported near a shelter. Unseen lights drift across the trees, just beyond perception. The hiker is exhausted, dehydrated, and increasingly disoriented. Individually, each factor might be manageable. Together, they create a perfect storm. Many disappearances, near-fatal encounters, and cases of high strangeness occur under similar circumstances. The trail itself becomes a stage, orchestrating events that exploit the smallest mistake. Even when a human predator is involved, the environment magnifies the threat. Dense foliage muffles screams. Uneven terrain slows escape. Shelters provide both refuge and vulnerability. In some documented cases, attackers were never seen again, blending seamlessly into the wilderness. The Appalachian Trail allows predators, human or otherwise, to move unnoticed, untracked, and unaccounted for. The trail's high strangeness adds another dimension. Witnesses report sudden disorientation where compasses fail, lights and shadows that seem to guide or mislead, a pervasive feeling of being observed. For some hikers, these sensations are enough to alter their decisions, leading them further from safety. Even experienced outdoorsmen admit they have been unnerved by these inexplicable encounters. The trail does not just test endurance. It tests perception. It tests trust. It tests whether you notice the invisible risks before it's too late. All threats, human, natural, or unexplained, are amplified by the Appalachian Trail's vastness and isolation. Distance is measured in miles, not minutes. Help can be hours away, and a single error can cascade into catastrophe. The 13th dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this: danger does not arrive in isolation. It converges, and when it does, even the smallest misstep can be fatal. The Appalachian Trail stretches over 2,190 miles of mountains, valleys, and forests, but no map can chart its true dangers. Through this journey, we have seen teenagers vanishing in broad daylight, leaving nothing behind, shelters that conceal predators who blend seamlessly into the wilderness, survivors carrying memories that refuse to fade, unexplained lights, shadows, and whispers that unsettle even the most seasoned hikers, families left waiting, hoping, grieving without closure, patterns of disappearances that defy reason, repeating across decades and states. Each of these truths hints at a reality that is far more complex and far more terrifying than any single explanation could encompass. The Appalachian Trail is a landscape of extremes. It challenges skill, endurance, and courage. It rewards preparation and punishes oversight. But beyond that, it contains mysteries that cannot be mapped or measured. Some vanishances may be attributed to nature, some to human malice, some, perhaps, to forces we do not yet understand. And even when answers are found, they rarely satisfy the human need for closure. Hikers who tread the trail must respect more than its steep climbs or unpredictable weather. They must respect the unseen, the unpredictable, the silent forces that have claimed so many. Because the Appalachian Trail is not just a path through the wilderness. It is a labyrinth of hidden dangers, layered realities, and unanswered questions. Even the most experienced hikers can walk it for hours, for days, and still not understand the true risks it holds. The final dark secret of the Appalachian Trail is this. The trail is more than a path. It is a mirror, reflecting fear, curiosity, and vulnerability back at those who dare to walk it. And so we leave you with the question that haunts hikers, investigators, and families alike. Do you believe the trail hides something supernatural, or is it all simply a matter of misfortune and human error? For those who dare, the Appalachian Trail keeps its secrets close. For those who walk it alone, it demands respect and perhaps eternal caution.